have to say that what you ended with is a very important point. I am going to talk about that when I get to it. But I have to say that Stanley Renshon has written a very incisive analysis of the immigration issue and the recommendations that have been made for reform, particularly highlighting the false assumptions and faulty theories that underlie so much of the policy discussions in Washington on this very contentious issue. Now, as he correctly surmises, with the president repeatedly vowing to pursue so-called comprehensive immigration reform, and I put comprehensive in quotes, there's no doubt that the policies that will be pushed are going to be some combination of the recommendations made by these three prior task forces that Dr. Renshon has analyzed. Now, one steadfast and unbroken rule in Washington is that every time members of Congress and the executive branch want to avoid having to pay the political costs of proposing solutions to a vexing public policy problem, they inevitably appoint a blue ribbon panel that will supposedly take an unbiased, objective view of the problem and make so-called bipartisan recommendations on how the problem should be solved. As Dr. Renshon aptly says in his analysis, such panels give presidents and Congress the appearance of doing something without necessarily committing them to any particular action. I found very amusing, particularly because of its accuracy, Dr. Renshon's description of what the title of a doctoral thesis on the impact of blue ribbon commissions on policy development would be. He suggests that the primary title of such a graduate thesis might reasonably be Dead End. The supposed objectiveness of these types of panels is almost always a total mirage, one that the news media buys into, unless, of course, they disagree with its conclusions. My experience in this political town is that the claimed detachment, an unprejudiced nature, is usually a grand illusion, if I can borrow the name of Jean Renoir's film masterpiece. Their conclusions, and Dr. Renshon, I think, points this out very well, are invariably based on the biases of the individuals appointed, which of course comes from what is the selection criteria used by the institutions that set up the panels, and also depend very much on the deliberative process implemented for their work, which, as Dr. Renshon says, can, quote, influence the discussions and result in varied and sometimes subtle ways. Individuals with strongly held views that depart from what is the politically correct and politically accepted wisdom in Washington, even if it's not wisdom at all, almost never make it onto these types of task forces. Mark, I think you and I probably would not be appointed to any of these task forces.
Although I have a bet that the next immigration task force that happens, you never know.
Yeah, right.
I'll be on
Still
it. So.
holding on hope.
As Dr. Renshon points out, all of the recent proposals in Washington for so-called comprehensive immigration reform supposedly couple border and enforcement strategies with support for some form of legalization for the 10 to 12 million illegal aliens in the United States. That's what he calls the grand bargain. But the experiences of the American people who watched the 1986 deal that legalized 3 million illegal aliens in exchange for what was supposedly going to finally be real enforcement of our immigration laws, which did not occur, shows what a grand illusion another such grand bargain would be. You know, it's said, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. The American people do not trust the American government to enforce immigration laws. That's because the last several decades have demonstrated the almost complete unwillingness of the political leadership of the executive branch, no matter which party, to strictly enforce our immigration requirements. The American people have watched this with dismay, which is why polls show almost overwhelming opposition to any grand bargain, to any comprehensive immigration reform. And I should add, as Dr. Renshon said at the beginning of his talk, look, I'm very much in favor of legal immigration to this country. I am a first-generation son of immigrants who came here in 1951. And legal immigration has helped make us a great country. But I don't believe that the advocates, for example, for amnesty, for the huge numbers of illegal aliens in this country, understand that both that push and the unwillingness of political leaders in Washington to actually enforce our existing immigration laws actually imperil legal immigration. Because it makes the American people who, a majority, they understand that we're a country of immigrants and they support legal immigration, but it makes them distrust the government and how it's handling immigration. And I think that that can have a very bad effect on legal immigration in this country. Americans want to see the federal government finally enforcing our immigration laws, securing the border, deporting illegal aliens who are caught instead of ignoring them and releasing them again, punishing employers who knowingly hire illegal aliens, and they want them to help state and local governments with their problems in this area rather than suing them as the Justice Department has against Arizona. And they see the word comprehensive, which is one of these focus group words that they came up with to cover this, as what it really is, which is just another word for amnesty.